Hey, hope you all are well. This is Zach with Infernal Tool Technologies, and today what I have for you is what you are going to need to start out in the trades. My videos in the past are outlining the different ways of finding a good job in the trades and working on yourself, but there's a few things that you're going to need when you do finally get that job in the trades. And that's what I'm bringing to you today. If you guys could just take a second to subscribe and like the video. We are bringing content to you every week, and we will continue to. And if you are liking the value that I'm bringing, then please leave a comment down below and let me know about what stage you are in the trades. If you're just starting out, if you've been in it for 10, 20, 30 years, just leave a comment down below and let me know. But we're going to get into it right now. So, the tools are the first thing that you're really going to need when you're getting into the trades. The tools that you're going to need are going to really pave the way for you to excel in the trades. You could be starting out just as a laborer, or you could be moving in as an apprentice, and all the things that you are going to need to excel in the trades, I'm going to list out right for you. And these are basic. These are not a lot of money you're going to be going out and spending and being the professional on the job site. This is for the person who is entry level, just entering the trades. So the tools that you are going to need is a tool belt. Now, there is so many tool belts out on the market, and it's just honestly going to take you some time and some comparisons to really figure out what tool belt works for you. But what I can say is that if you were working a job in the trades where you're wearing a tool belt all day long, you are going to be wanting to look for comfort first. There's going to be all these fancy pockets and different spots for you to put stuff on these tool belts, and they're going to cost an expensive amount. But what you really need to do is just try a few on and make sure it feels comfortable. And especially look for a tool belt that comes with the overall straps, because you won't be using these all the time, but if you're working a day where you're carrying a lot in your bags, a lot of nails, different racks of nails, whatever it may be, you're potentially going to want to have that extra support over your shoulders so you're not carrying that load all day every day. So the comfort is the first thing that you want to look for in a tool belt, but the second thing you want to look for is just the ergonomics of the tool bag. You want to make sure that it has pockets that are going to be working for what you're doing. Are you using a lot of nails? Are you siding? Are you roofing? Do you have to have a pouch that's filled with nails? Are you an electrician? Do you need to have pouches that are going to have screwdrivers and pliers and different tools like that? You're going to have to look for that. You're going to have to see what works for you and just really do your research and find out what bags work for you. But down below in the description, I will put some tool bags that I've used in the past that I really think work for most people, especially catered towards carpenters. But I'll put some stuff down below so you can see different options of what I've used in the past. So after you've gotten your tool belt, you're going to have to fill that tool belt. And so what you need next is your tape measure. And the tape measure is one of the most used tools that you will use your entire career. You will be using it every single day, most of the day. And just to let you know, your tape measures are going to break. So you can buy the most expensive tape measure on the market, or you can buy the cheapest tape measure on the market. They're both going to break. That is just a fact. They just don't make them to the technology isn't there to where they're indestructible. That's just a fact. And if you're working outside in the weather, if you're working when it's raining or you're in a climate where it snows a lot, you're going to get water on your tape measure. The tape measure is then going to roll up into the tape, and it's going to get trapped in there. It's going to make it rust. You're going to get it snagged on something, and it's going to rip. you're gonna break tape measures constantly, and it's every few months, half a month, maybe if you can push it to a year, that's great. Every year you're gonna have to buy a new tape measure, but just find one that works for you. In the beginning, maybe you would like to have a tape measure that lists all the measurements out for you. You can get tape measurements out there that have sixteenths. So if you're just starting and you don't know your sixteenths yet, find a tape measure that has it written out for you, because when you're working with other carpenters who have been doing this for years and they yell out 5/16 or 11/16, you want to be able to just look at it and just see, because it's going to make you stand out above the other carpenters out there. Because it is, when you first start out, it's a little bit difficult to know your sixteenths right off the top of your head. You can sit there for a minute and do your math to figure out what a 16th is, but in the beginning, if you want to have a tape measure that lists out the 16ths for you, I think it'll be very beneficial. It'll teach you as well. You'll be getting accustomed to where the 16ths lie between 3/8, between the quarters. You're just going to start to learn that where they fit on the tape measure. And maybe then down the road, when you break that tape measure, then you can move to a tape measure that doesn't have 16ths on it, because typically the tape measures that have 16ths on them are very bulky. Depending on what type of work you're doing, you might not want a bulky tape measure. If you're doing fine finish work, that might not work for you. You want a smaller tape measure just so it can fit really snug into the spots and you can get accurate measurements. But it depends on the work you're doing. If you're outside working a lot, if you're framing, if you're siding, if you're roofing, you might want a very durable tape measure, one that can withstand a large fall, one when you, maybe lengthwise too, if you want ones that are up to 35 feet, if you're doing a lot of roof measurements or you're framing and you need to do layout measurements. That's something to think about. If you're doing a lot of that, then get a tape measure that is very big and has long lengths to it. If you know that you're not going to be really doing measurements over 25 feet, then I urge you to just get a tape measure that's only 25 feet, because they get much more bulky after the 25 feet. So something to think about. Start out with a tape measure that has the 16ths, and then maybe move into tape measures that don't list as much of the measurements once you start learning how to read the tape measure. So after the tape measure, the next most important tool for you to have is the hammer, of course. Carpenters, any tradesman is swinging a hammer almost every single day. You're going to want to have a nice hammer. And this again applies to what you are doing. If you are framing, you're going to want a framing hammer. If you're doing fine finish work, you're going to want a different hammer for that, because the mallet part of the hammer, it differentiates for what type of work you're doing. If you have a framing hammer, it's going to have a waffle texture to the mallet, and if you're trying to have fine finish work and you're just tapping wood together, you're going to leave waffle marks. So you don't want to have a framing hammer when you're doing fine finished work. The same way you don't want to have a fine finished hammer when you're doing framing work, because you're just going to blow out your elbow and your shoulder. You're going to be wailing on nails all the time, and it's going to really wear you out. And you're going to be missing the nails a lot, because usually the fine finished hammers have a very smaller hole or a mallet, and the framing hammers have a larger one, just so more surface area, you have a better chance of hitting the nail. So do your research, get a good quality one. It will last you a lifetime. S-Wing, it makes very good hammers. I don't do a lot of framing work, so I'm sure there's a lot of great framing hammers out there, but the ones that I've typically seen that people hold on to for a very long time and can repair pretty easily are the wooden ones. Actually, you're going to be beating up that hammer, and just get the wooden ones. You can make the length of the hammer as long as you want. After you break the first one, you can remake one, or you can buy different lengths that will fit onto the head. So that's something to think about. The type of work you're going to be doing. If you're framing houses, get a framing hammer. If you're going to be doing interior work and more fine finish work, then look at a hammer that you need to think about what you're going to be actually hitting with the hammer. If you're hitting nails, or if you're hitting different products together, tapping them in place, it's going to differentiate the hammer that you actually want to use. So those are the essential tools that you're going to be using every single day. But the other tools that I'm going to list now are ones that you're going to need alongside all of these. And that's a square, a pry bar, different types of nail sets, and maybe pliers, if it's needle nose, if it's linesman, if it's wrenches or crescent wrenches, things like that, you're going to just need in your tool belt, because if you're outside nailing nails and just cutting siding and doing framing, you might not think like, what do I need a crescent wrench for or pliers for? But you'd be surprised how many times, if you need to change a saw blade on your saw, you're going to need a pair of pliers to do that, unless the saw comes with a key on it, but most of the times those get lost. And it's just good to be prepared. If you're up on a roof and your saw needs a new blade, someone can whip you up a blade and you can just change it right there. And you're not coming down, wasting all that time, your energy, switching that stuff out. So, but the square is something essential that you're going to need. You're definitely going to need a square, because you can make solid measurements. You can take your tape measure and measure a length, and then you can square off that length to make a cut line. So when you cut, you are cutting accurately. And I'm going to make some videos in the future of maybe me showing the practical uses of these things. These have been more formal videos of me just telling you information that hopefully you are writing down, or you're coming back to this video and looking at to get you prepared for different aspects of the construction industry. But in the future, I will be making some videos to where you can see the practical uses of these things that I'm talking about. And one of the things is the square. The square, I can make a video all about the square. There's so many measurements on the square, and don't worry yourself with a lot of the measurements on the square. Right now, the main thing that you need to worry about if you're just starting out in the trades is just squaring off a straight line and making a straight, accurate cut. Because nothing is worse than when you ask for somebody to cut you a measurement and they have the length right maybe, but the cut might have a belly to it or a bow to it, and it's because the person didn't accurately square off their line and cut that line. And that's where the square comes in, just for the practical everyday use. But there is so many other uses that come with a square. Cutting rafters, there's measurements on the square. Cutting any angle, you can use the square super fast. That's why they call it a speed square, because you can get angles and measurements in a quick time. And we'll talk about things like that in the future. But a square is an essential tool for you to have. And along with the hammer is the pry bar. Those kind of go hand in hand. When you have a hammer, you need a pry bar as well. And I can't stress this enough. Do not get a small dinky pry bar like a 6-inch or 8-inch pry bar. Like, at least get a foot long pry bar. Get a 12-inch pry bar that's made of a sturdy metal. I've broken pry bars in the past. I'm prying on things. The reason that you're getting a pry bar is you're going to be really putting some torque on something to get it off. You're trying to get something off that you can't just rip out with your hands, or your hammer doesn't fit in there. So you want a really sturdy pry bar that's made of a very good metal. And you can go to the cheaper places and they still will have these pry bars, like Harbor Freight or something. I don't know what you have in your area, but there are, even at the cheaper stores, some good quality pry bars. Is probably just the more expensive pry bar at that store. But definitely do not skimp on the cost of the pry bar, because it will break. It will break. You'll pry on it one day and all of a sudden it'll break in half. So those are the basic essential tools that you are going to need to really fill your tool belt. Maybe another one that you can think about is a chalk line. When you're taking measurements and you have to make really long rip cuts, a chalk line is going to be an essential tool to add in the arsenal of your tools in your tool belt. So think about that one as well. But moving on, we're going to move on to what else you're going to need in the trades when you're just starting out. Besides the tools that you're going to be using every single day is A notebook. Yes, a notebook. And you're going to want a couple different sizes. You're going to want maybe a small notebook that can fit in if you have a pocket on your shirt, or it can fit in the pocket in your pants. And you're going to want that on you all the time. That's going to be if someone's yelling out measurements to you and they're yelling out multiple measurements. I know me in particular, I get 2 measurements, 3 measurements, I start losing the first measurement that I had. So it's just really good to have that notepad around. You can write them down constantly. It's just reassurance that when you get to the cut table or wherever you're going to get whatever material, that you just can see it. Okay, it's not in my head anymore, it's on a piece of paper. And that doesn't have to do with measurements either. It could be you're just walking around throughout the day and you think of something that you need. You need more pencils or more pens or more markers or a certain type of screw or mud or whatever it be, and whatever product that you use every day. You can write it down just so you remember at the end of the day. If you're going to be going to the store at the end of the day or in the morning, the next morning, you have it written down. Because I can't tell you how many times that I have thought of things all throughout the day, and then when it comes to the end of the day, I totally forgot. And I'm at the store, I'm at Home Depot or whatever, and I'm sitting there looking around like, what was I thinking about? I knew I had something that I needed, and I can't think of it. And then, of course, I think of it when I get back to the job site. And that's not a good time to be remembering what you needed. You want to remember it when you're at the store, and the best way to remember is when you have it written down. So keep a notepad with you all the time, just in your pocket. If it's on your shirt, if it's in your pants, just constantly have a little notepad. Super inexpensive, and it will make you look so much better than the other people around you, because they're going to just be looking for something to write it on a piece of wood or try to keep it in their mind, and it never works out. It's good to have it written down professionally. But also when it comes to notebooks, is you should have a large, like, spiral notebook, just a normal notebook, or even just like a legal pad or something like that, to where you can write down bigger orders. So if you're just getting to a job and you're with your foreman or your lead, and they're going around making measurements of different materials, they need different drywall lists, or they need framing or lumber lists, or different things like that, you can be standing there right with them, writing these things down. And having a notepad and pen and pencil or whatever is good just to have, because you're gonna be their go-to guy then. The lead is gonna say, hey, come on over here, let's take some measurements, because they know that you're prepared. You have the notebook and you have the pen and pencil to actually write it down. And maybe get a clipboard as well, so that you can keep these things together. They make some really good clipboards for the construction industry where it actually opens up and it has a pocket underneath, so you can store some different legal documents maybe as well, change order files or your pay stubs, or other like highlighters, markers, pens, pencils, all these things you can store in there, and you can just keep it on your passenger seat in your vehicle or something like that. But having these notebooks are really going to be, they're going to just make you stand out amongst your colleagues, because most people don't come that prepared, and it's going to propel you in your career a lot more. So moving on from we started with the tools, talking about the notebook and the documents that you might want to have with you. Next thing is clothes. Clothes is huge in this industry, and it is, honestly, I've learned over the years, a pretty big expense. If you're going to be getting into the trades, just know that you're going to be spending a lot of money on your attire. Even if the company that you work for gives you t-shirts or something, that will help a little bit, but you're going to be still spending a lot of money on your attire. So the things that you're definitely 100% going to need when you start in the trades, when it comes to clothing, is boots and shoes. Depending on the type of work that you're doing, no matter what, you're going to need boots. Steel toe preferably, but you're going to need a nice durable pair of boots that are waterproof, hopefully, and they're going to withstand going through job sites with debris and nails and screws. If you're doing fine finish work, if you're doing framing or rough framing work, you're going to need boots. You're just going to need them because you might be doing some demolition one day in fine finish work and you don't want to step on a nail. In framing, you don't want lumber to fall on your toes and cut them off. So you're going to want a really nice quality boot. But at the same time, if you're doing fine finish work or it's a last day of building a deck and you're just doing some finishes to it, you're going to want some shoes because boots after a while become very uncomfortable. And you don't want to have to wear them every single day. So get a nice pair of shoes that are durable and that you don't care about them getting dirty or getting something like paint or whatever on them. But get a pair of shoes as well. Trust me, it's going to make all the difference because there's going to come some days where you just don't want to put the boots on, and you don't have to put the boots on because it's not a intense day or something. It's just a lighter day, and it's really going to just make your week so much better when you can just wear the shoes. They breathe better. They're not as uncomfortable. They're not as heavy. If you're doing a lot of stairs or climbing ladders all day, the boots actually do make a big difference. They add weight to you, and you'll feel it over the time. So moving on, shorts and pants, you're going to want both. Preferably, you're going to want 5 pairs. You're going to want 5 pairs of pants and 5 pairs of shorts. Maybe not everyone could afford that, but if you can get to that point, that's going to be great because then every single day you're prepared and you're not wearing clothes the next day and you're ready for whatever the weather might be. You might have a rainy day and you can't wear shorts. It's still summer, but it's raining and it's a little bit colder. The breeze is coming in. You're going to want to have pants. You're going to want them clean, and you're going to want to be able to change within them depending on the weather. So that's something to keep in mind. Definitely get clothing that has a lot of pockets so you can put maybe your utility knife in them, pens and pencils, and make them breathable as well. You don't want something that's too tight. You want something that is going to be breathable, air is going to flow through them, and just keep you cool and comfortable throughout the whole day. So we got the shorts, we got the pants, we got the boots, we got the shoes. So let's move on to hats. You're going to want maybe some different kinds of hats. Depending on the weather that you're working in, you're going to need different types of hats. If you're working in Florida and the sun's beating down on you every day, you might want a wide-brimmed hat. So it's protecting your neck from the sun, your face from the sun, and you're not getting burnt every single day. Whereas if you're working in a climate where there's winter a lot, you might want to have some beanies and some hats that are going to keep your ears warm as well. You can pull them down and keep your whole head warm. Or maybe you're in just like a medium climate and you just want to keep the sun away from you, but you don't want to be too hot. Then maybe just like a baseball cap or a visor will work for you. But depending on the climate that you have, you just want to have one on hand. Maybe keep it in your vehicle depending on what happens. Sometimes in the winter where I live, it could be a very warm day. The sun's out all day and it's not even that cold, so you don't need it. But then all of a sudden, in the middle of the day, the cold rips through, it starts snowing, and you're going to want that beanie on you. So be prepared with that. Maybe have multiple different hats, or just have a hat that you know you're going to need potentially on some days, and just keep it in your vehicle. Gloves as well. Now gloves, there's all different types of gloves, and this also applies to the weather as well. If you're going to want gloves that are for cold weather, then you're going to want a good quality glove where you can still grab stuff. You want it to be warm, but you don't want it to be too bulky to where you can't actually grab like nails. If you're grabbing nails out of your tool belt, it can be very difficult to grab nails if you have a very bulky glove. Also, if you're doing like demolition or something like that, you're going to want a glove that's just really it's not nice and fancy, but it protects your hands. It keeps the dust and grime away. It protects you from nails and cuts and slivers and things like that. So you might want demolition gloves. And then also you might want to have some latex or non-latex other material gloves that are disposable for just working with different things. Like if you're working with plumbing, then you might want to have it actually work. Just if you're removing toilets and things like that, you don't want to be touching stuff like that. So having maybe a box of those as well could be very beneficial to you. So in certain weather conditions, you're going to need other clothes as well. If it's really cold out, you're going to make sure you want different sweaters, long johns, coat, gloves, and hat. You're going to want those things on hand. But rain is something to keep in mind as well. If it's raining, you really want to have waterproof clothing, because you can have warm clothing. You can have, if it's warm out, you don't have to have a lot of clothing on, but nothing's going to ruin your day than getting soaked. And you can have whatever type of clothing, but if it's not waterproof and you're getting soaked, you're going to have a miserable day. So having a rain jacket or a poncho that you have folded up or something just to protect you from the rain is super important, because you just never know when it's going to happen. Sometimes the weather channels, they can't predict the rain as well. It will come out of nowhere. At least where I live, they'll say it's not going to rain, and then all of a sudden it starts pouring. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. You're going to want to have some rain gear on you or in your vehicle, or the company that you work for, make sure that they supply something for you so that you're not getting slowed down when you're working. I think that pretty much covers the clothing. It's just basically you got to be prepared for all different conditions and having all different clothes, because they're going to wear out too. Your boots, your shoes, your pants, your shirts, your hats, maybe not so much, but everything is going to get worn out. Your gloves are going to get worn out, and you're just going to have to, it's just going to be a recurring payment. You're going to constantly have to pay. So maybe start out with the cheaper stuff and start doing some research on the more expensive clothing and workwear, to where you're not buying it as often anymore and you're comfortable as well. So I'm going to wrap this up with one more category that I think most people have, but maybe not everybody has, but something that it is becoming more and more essential for people to have nowadays in the construction industry, and that is a phone. Phone and technology is something super important for people to have, even when you're just starting out in the trades. To have a phone and be able to take pictures and to be able to message and communicate with people, and to maybe even download some applications that the company that you're working for actually uses is super important. And if it isn't essential, if the employer that hires you says you don't have to have a smartphone, then having a smartphone is actually going to set you above the other people around you. You're going to be able to take photos and send those photos to your employer. One tip that I can tell you is that your employer will never, ever, ever, ever be upset that you send them too many photos. They'll be upset if you don't send them enough photos. But if you send them photos of every inch of the job, what you did for the day, and things like that, they're just going to love you. I can assure you that, because it covers them. It really does. They can have a file on the job that you're working on, and they can just put all these photos in that file. So if something down the road does happen and the customer or the homeowner has an issue, they can reference these photos. And that's super important. It's becoming more and more important every single day. I remember when I first started in the trades, no one took pictures of anything. Nothing. You didn't have a picture of anything. You just did your work, and that was it. Maybe for your website, you had some pictures for on the website to get more customers in. But legally, nobody took pictures of things to protect themselves. Nowadays, it's a complete opposite, because people are so happy that having pictures is extremely important. So if you can be constantly taking pictures and have a smartphone and sending them to your employer, maybe with an app, they might have a certain app like Adobe or something like that, or OneDrive through Microsoft, and if you can do that, they're going to be looking at you as their go-to guy, their eyes and ears in the field, and that's going to really put you in a good place to where you can leverage that to make more money. You can tell them that you're very valuable, you're a person that actually takes the time to take these photos and takes the time to send them to them, and they're not going to want to lose somebody like that, and they'll even pay somebody more for that. So it's definitely something to think about. But let's just review everything that I laid out today. So tools, I laid out the different tools that you're going to need when you first start out. Depending on the job that you are taking, you can acquire more tools that are going to better suit what exactly you do. But this is just the basics. This is the essentials that everybody's going to need. This spans most of the trades. You're going to need those basic tools. The notebooks and the legal documents, or the clipboard to store those legal documents, it was the second thing that I think is essential for people to have and for you to have. And the third thing is clothing and attire. Really look into this, do research, find what works for you. You might have more comfort in something than I do. So you're going to have to find whatever that is comfortable for you. And the fourth thing is the phone. We just went over that. There's so many positives to having a phone. If you are able to afford it and you're working in the trades, it's definitely an essential. That's why I put it on this list. I think it's very essential for you to have that. Even though your employer might not say so, I think it will set you above your coworkers if you can actually pay that amount. And they're making it pretty affordable nowadays for people to have a smartphone. You don't have to have an iPhone or an Android. You can have a smartphone that's very affordable out there. So if this brought you any value, then please hit the like button. If you didn't like this video, then I guess hit the dislike button. But if you do hit the dislike button, then leave a comment down below and just let me know what you think that are the essentials for somebody to have in this industry. If you have some input, then please put it down below. But other than that, I hope that you start your journey in the construction industry and you start it well from watching this video. So, like I said before, like the video if it brought you any value, and we'll be putting out more videos in the future. Have a nice day.